Most people think ancient humans survived brutal winters because they were simply tougher than we are, but that's not true. Without warm clothing, insulated shelters, or constant access to fire, even the strongest person would die in freezing temperatures. So how did our ancestors survive Ice Age winters that could kill a modern human in just a matter of hours? The answer changed the course of human history. Imagine stepping outside into a world where the temperature never rises above freezing for weeks. Snow stretches across the landscape. The wind never seems to stop. There are no heated homes, no insulated jackets, no supermarkets filled with food. Every single day becomes a battle against the cold. For ancient humans, this wasn't a survival television show. It was everyday life. During the last Ice Age, enormous ice sheets covered much of northern Europe and North America. Even beyond the glaciers, many regions experienced long, harsh winters with limited food and dangerous cold. Not every part of the world looked the same, but wherever severe winters occurred, survival demanded remarkable adaptation. Cold itself wasn't always the biggest threat. Hypothermia was. The human body works best at a temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius. The body heat escapes faster than it can be replaced. Muscles weaken. Thinking becomes slower. Coordination disappears. Eventually, vital organs begin to fail. Without protection, freezing temperatures could become deadly in a surprisingly short time. But ancient humans weren't simply wandering through the snow hoping to survive. They planned, they prepared, they adapted, and over thousands of years, they developed technologies so effective that they allowed humans to spread into some of the coldest environments on Earth. Their greatest advantage wasn't stronger bodies. It was smarter ideas. The first of those ideas was something so familiar that it's easy to overlook today: fire, not simply as warmth, but as the foundation of an entirely new way of surviving winter. When most people think about surviving prehistoric winters, they imagine one thing: a campfire, and they're right, but not for the reason you might think. Fires certainly provided warmth. On freezing nights, that alone could mean the difference between life and death. It allowed families to gather together, dry wet clothing, melt snow for water, and cook food that would otherwise be difficult or even dangerous to eat. But fire had another advantage that was just as important. It extended the day. Long after the sun disappeared, ancient humans could still repair tools, prepare animal hides, teach children, and plan the next hunt. A few extra hours of light every evening may not sound revolutionary, but over thousands of winters, those hours added up to more learning, better planning, and stronger communities. In many ways, fire became humanity's first survival technology. Archaeologists have uncovered ancient hearths across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, showing that controlled fire was being used by prehistoric humans hundreds of thousands of years ago. While researchers continue to debate exactly when different human groups mastered fire consistently, there is little doubt that regular fire use became one of our species' greatest advantages. Yet even the biggest fire had one major weakness: you couldn't carry it with you the moment you left camp to hunt, track animals, or gather resources. The freezing cold returned that forced ancient humans to solve an even greater problem. How do you keep warm when there's no fire nearby? The answer wasn't simply wrapping animal skins around their shoulders. Early hides were heavy, stiff, and often poor at trapping heat if they weren't properly prepared. Over generations, people learned how to scrape hides clean, soften them, and stitch them into clothing that fit the body much more closely. This wasn't fashion. It was engineering. Point one of the most remarkable discoveries archaeologists have made is the bone sewing needle. Some examples, dating back tens of thousands of years, even include carefully drilled eyes for thread, allowing people to sew fitted garments rather than simply draping hides over themselves. That small invention changed everything. Loose hides allow cold air to circulate. Fitted clothing traps layers of warm air close to the body, creating much better insulation. Modern winter jackets rely on the same basic principle. instead of synthetic. Fibers. Ancient humans used reindeer, bison, fox, hare, and other animal furs adapted to survive cold climates in many regions. They likely combined different materials for different purposes: thick fur for warmth, softer hides for flexibility, multiple layers for insulation. Even footwear became surprisingly sophisticated. Without protecting the feet, walking across frozen ground could quickly lead to injury and dangerous heat loss. Evidence suggests that prehistoric people produced insulated boots and wrapped their feet with soft animal skins or plant fibers. Depending on the environment and available resources, these weren't crude survival tools. They were the product of generations of observation, experimentation, and shared knowledge. Every successful hunt taught new lessons. Every harsh winter revealed weaknesses, and each generation passed those improvements to the next. That's one of humanity's greatest evolutionary advantages, that we don't just adapt through biology, that we adapt through culture. Knowledge itself became a survival tool, but clothing alone still wasn't enough. Even the warmest garments couldn't protect people from freezing winds every hour of every day. When blizzards arrived, when temperatures dropped even further, ancient humans needed somewhere the cold couldn't easily follow. They needed homes built to survive winter itself. Imagine standing outside during a blizzard. The wind is screaming, snow is piling up around your feet. The temperature keeps falling. Even with warm clothing, you couldn't stay outside forever. Eventually, you would need shelter. For ancient humans, a shelter wasn't simply a place to sleep. It was a carefully designed barrier between life and death. Many prehistoric groups used caves whenever they were available. A cave blocked the wind, trapped warmth from a fire, and offered protection from snow and predators. But caves were surprisingly rare. Most people couldn't simply find one whenever winter arrived. So they built their own. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of prehistoric shelters made from wooden poles, animal hides, and in parts of Ice Age Europe where trees were scarce, even mammoth bones. These structures weren't universal, but they demonstrate the remarkable variety of solutions humans developed for different environments. Some homes were partially dug into the ground. That may sound strange, but the earth acts as a natural insulator. Just a short distance below the surface, temperatures fluctuate much less than the freezing air above. By lowering part of a shelter into the ground and covering it with hides, branches, or other available materials, people could create a space that retained heat far more effectively than an exposed campsite. It was prehistoric engineering, and it worked. Inside these shelters, the fire could finally do its job efficiently. Instead of fighting constant wind, its warmth stayed trapped within a much smaller space. That meant less fuel was needed, less time was spent gathering wood, and more energy could be devoted to finding food. Because surviving winter wasn't only about staying warm. It was also about avoiding starvation. Winter transformed the landscape. Plants disappeared beneath snow, rivers froze, many animals migrated away, others became much harder to track. A failed hunt didn't just mean going hungry. It could threaten the survival of the entire group. That's why prehistoric hunters became incredibly strategic. Rather than chasing animals randomly, they learned seasonal migration routes. They understood where herds crossed valleys, which rivers animals visited, and where natural terrain could be used to corner prey. Archaeological sites preserve evidence of coordinated hunts involving large mammals, such as reindeer, bison, and, in some regions and time periods, mammoths. These discoveries suggest careful planning and cooperation, rather than isolated individuals relying on strength alone. Large animals provided far more than meat. Their hides became clothing and shelter coverings. Their bones became needles, spear points, and structural supports. Their tendons could be processed into strong thread. Even fat was valuable. Rendered animal fat supplied concentrated calories during food shortages and could also serve as fuel for simple lamps. In some prehistoric cultures, very little went to waste. Perhaps the greatest survival tool. However, wasn't fire. Or clothing. Or shelters. It was other people. One person alone had little chance of surviving a brutal Ice Age winter, but a group could divide responsibilities. Some hunted, some maintained the fire, others prepared hides, repaired tools, cared for children, or watched for danger. Knowledge spread through conversation and observation. A child didn't have to rediscover how to make warm clothing. They learned from parents and elders. Each generation inherited thousands of years of practical experience. In many ways, that shared knowledge became humanity's most powerful technology. It couldn't freeze. It couldn't break. And the more people shared it, the stronger every community became, which raises an even bigger question. If ancient humans were already mastering fire, clothing, shelters, and cooperation, what does the archaeological evidence actually reveal about just how successful those strategies became? Today, archaeologists continue uncovering clues buried beneath layers of ice, soil, and stone. Each discovery tells the same remarkable story. Ancient humans didn't survive brutal winters by chance. They survived because they adapted faster than the environment could defeat them. Bone needles discovered in Siberia and Europe reveal that people were sewing fitted clothing tens of thousands of years ago. Ancient hearths show that fires weren't occasional luxuries. They were carefully maintained, often rebuilt in the same locations. Generation after generation, stone tools worn smooth from scraping hides suggest countless hours spent preparing warm clothing before winter ever arrived. Even the remains of prehistoric homes reveal careful planning. Some settlements were positioned near rivers, migration routes, or sheltered valleys where food and fresh water were easier to access. Others were built to reduce exposure to freezing winds or maximize warmth from the winter sun. None of these choices were accidental. They were the result of thousands of years of observation, trial, error, and learning. Perhaps the most remarkable discovery isn't a tool at all, but it's evidence of cooperation. At several archaeological sites, researchers have found individuals who lived for years despite severe injuries or disabilities that would have made hunting impossible on their own. Broken bones that healed, missing limbs, signs of long-term illness. These people survived because someone else gathered food, someone else maintained the fire, someone else protected them. That tells us something extraordinary. Compassion may have been just as important to human survival as intelligence, because a group that cared for one another kept valuable knowledge alive. An experienced hunter could still teach younger generations. An elder could remember migration routes. A skilled craftsperson could pass down better ways to make clothing or tools. Knowledge didn't disappear when someone became injured. It stayed within the community, and over thousands of years, those communities became increasingly adaptable. Eventually, humans spread across Europe, into northern Asia, and later into environments that many other large mammals struggled to survive, not because humans were the strongest. Or the fastest. Or the biggest, but because we became the best problem solvers. Winter shaped us in ways that still affect our lives today. The clothes we wear, the homes we build, the habit of storing food, working together during disasters, planning months ahead instead of days. Many of these behaviors have roots stretching back to the survival challenges faced by our prehistoric ancestors. So, the next time you pull on a winter coat, light a fireplace, or step inside a warm house while snow falls outside, remember that you're benefiting from ideas that began tens of thousands of years ago. Ideas created by people who had no electricity. No central heating. No modern medicine. Only their intelligence, their resilience, and each other. The real reason ancient humans survived brutal winters wasn't because they were fearless. It wasn't because they were immune to the cold, and it certainly wasn't because life was easier back then. They survived because they observed nature, shared knowledge across generations, developed increasingly sophisticated technology, and relied on cooperation when survival depended on in many ways. Winter became humanity's greatest teacher. Forced our ancestors to innovate. Plan ahead. Work together, and those same abilities would eventually help our species spread across nearly every corner of the planet. The harshest seasons didn't just test humanity, they helped create it. That if you enjoyed uncovering how our ancestors overcame one of Earth's greatest survival challenges, there are countless more mysteries hidden in human history waiting to be explored. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.